See, saving the Earth is fine. That's fine. But I want to remind you, the Earth is going to be here no matter what we do. We're just a bunch of goofball humans. I want to save the Earth for me. Human. I want me to live here. And the reason this is significant, if you look at the Earth from space, this is the International Space Station, and that's the Earth. Actually, it's a picture. And the Earth, I don't think it would fit in this room. Anyway, when you look at a picture like this from space, you might think at first it was defocused or something. But no, the atmosphere is so astonishingly thin. And this is something that my grandfather would only barely get an idea of. My father would kind of know about it, how thin it is. When you look at it from here, you get a sense that it's just nothing. It's just barely there. And this is what I like to call gives you an appreciation for what I like to call your place in space. Now, I was 9 years old. I went to the World's Fair in New York City. New York City is back east. It's a big deal, but it's not. The World's Fair had a display sponsored by the United Nations of the world's population. Now, my father not only took thousands of pictures of sundials, he also took pictures of the car's odometer as it changed from 99,999 to 100,000. And this is, he took a picture with a camera with film. It was a technique for recording images. Hey, the cop, what are you doing, sir? I'm taking a picture of you to really keep it moving. It's a highway. Anyway, that same guy and I go to the World's Fair, and we had just missed it. There was a big total board, big display, total board of the world's population. 2,999,999,999 people in the world had just flipped to 3 billion. And we got there, it was 3 billion and a couple thousand. It was still cool, but not quite as cool. Right? Well, you guys, yesterday evening, I captured this image this is a website that gets its information from the United Nations. People thought the world's population went through 7 billion on Halloween, but it's probably a little less than that. 6.8 billion, almost 6.9 billion. In my lifetime, it more than doubled. More than doubled. When you have that many humans, including my old boss, living on a world where the atmosphere is only that thick, you're headed for trouble. And that is why you guys are going to have to, dare I say it, change the world! Here I am. No. I'm over here. This is a picture of me. On the rim of the Mount St. Helens crater in Washington State. And this is Spirit Lake. If you know the history of Mount St. Helens, this is where this guy, his name really was Harry Truman, and he disappeared in that. But the reason everybody's lying down, and I know you guys, you're young guys, you're tough, you're cool, you maybe experiment with some of those beverages they sell during football games, but no matter how macho you are, I'm sorry, right there is the rim of the crater. It's 1,000 feet straight down! Whoa! And this material, this is volcanic ash, we call it. And it's just powder, it's like flour. And there's this great Scandinavian word, it's scree. It's scree. And it's just like ball bearing. It's just, whoa! So anyway, everybody's lying down. In the background is a famous Mount Rainier. And Mount Rainier is it's on the license plate of Washington State. It's great, but it's another volcano. And if you know that song, you guys are really young, but there's a band, the President of the United States of America, She's Gonna Blow a Volcano. It's about that mountain. Anyway, if you look at this, I took this picture from the same vantage point. If you look at this picture, here's this pristine Pacific Northwest wilderness, snow, ice, glaciers, real glaciers like the real thing. But if you look right there is a layer of smog. And that smog comes from people who live miles and miles, kilometers and kilometers away. They live in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. And this stuff just sloshes into this otherwise pristine wilderness. And I mention this because it's evidence of human activity on a huge scale, and it's a volcano. And volcanoes are very cool because if we look at the world's history, here's the year 1850 or so, and every time there's a big volcano, the world's temperature goes down a little bit. And people have studied this by looking at the cores of ice in Antarctica and Greenland. They've looked at the pollen count in the sediment of lakes. They've looked at the width of tree rings. When it's warm, they're wider. When it's cold, they're cool, they're thin, narrower. And every time there's a big volcano, the world cools off because stuff is thrown up high in the atmosphere that reflects sunlight into space. And this is one more crazy, sideways way of noticing that the world is getting warmer. So notice the world starts out at some base temperature, which we'll call around, what, 0.2 Celsius over there. Famous thing, Krakatoa, east of Java, blows up, and the world cools off. Santa Maria blows up. I kind of remember that, but El Shishan, I remember. Mount St. Helens, the world doesn't cool off very much because it's not in the tropics. If you're a volcano and you want to cool the earth off, you're going to have to move to the tropics. It's a big job, but if you're ambitious. Pinatubo, you guys were all alive for that. The world cools off a little bit. But notice that with these data, it's very compelling, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the famous organization of scientists organized by the United Nations, they have computed these data, but look, the world is always steadily getting warmer. And that's what you guys are going to have to do, change the world. If we don't do nothing, employing a double negative for comedic effect, really won't. If we do a little bit, it'll get somewhat warm. If we kind of get on it, it'll be great. If we committed to things they talked about at the Kyoto Protocol back in the 1990s, the world would be really steady. So, you'll meet people who are skeptical of all this, but here are the same data presented in another way. This, just if you've never seen it, this is the famous hockey stick graph. The gray lines, the blue lines, the brown lines, the lines all come from all different ways of measuring directly and indirectly the world's temperature. When you get pieces of ice and they have fewer neutrons in the water, that's because the sea surface was warmer and the oxygen with fewer neutrons would evaporate. When it gets colder, more neutrons don't evaporate as fast. So when you look at the world's temperature, it goes along pretty steadily, kind of a straight line in mathematical terms, and then that's the shaft of the hockey stick. And then in the last few years, the blade of the hockey stick has the world getting warmer faster than ever. Now, I would like to briefly, yet again, change the subject to me. The last few weeks, I've been in so much trouble because I did a voiceover for Al Gore's Climate Reality Project. And I did the voice without seeing the video. Right? So I've gotten a lot of email, maybe from some of you, about Bill Nye. That's me. Bill Nye is anti-science. And the reason is that they did this demonstration and they cheated. They had these jars that were too thick, they had globes in them that were too big, and it kept the demonstration from working. But I want you to know, I've done the demonstration several times. When you get a high enough column of gas, this side, the one with carbon dioxide in it, will get a little bit warmer than the one with just air. On the show Stuff Happens, I did it with methane, natural gas, like you cook on a stove with. And so understand we had this big plastic bomb. Nothing happened. But this one gets really warm, quite a bit warmer.